Alright, in this video I'm going to be carrying on with my gaming room build for my kids, and in this case I'm going to be framing up what is going to be a double width wall, so basically 2 layers of wall, and I really don't have too much above to connect it to because of all the ductwork and ventilation stuff, so I am going to have to get very creative in how I make a secure, strong wall with sort of limited access to the floor joists above. And again, because of the funny angle on these plumbing pipes, I am going to make a double thick wall coming off this existing wall that I've already created. So I need to find creative ways to secure the wall without having the capacity to attach it to the floor joists above, which turns out well. So I've already cut 3 boards, which is going to be the double top plate, and obviously the treated board is going to go on the bottom. Now this one chunk of wall, which is maybe 36 inches in length, is going to have access to the floor joist, and this is going to be the only chunk of wall that I could actually screw into the floor joist and actually attach it as per normal. Now everything is going to be 16 on center, but because all of these walls are very short, the distance between each of the studs ends up to be effectively a little bit less than 16 inches on center. Now if you've seen any of my other framing videos, you'll know I don't own a nail gun. So I just use a hammer to get everything in, and what I like to do is jam one screw in first, and that holds everything together, and then I'm not trying to hold boards together while I'm putting in nails. I find the one screw really brings everything together well, and when going through the treated wood, I do use nails and screws that are rated for treated lumber, so those are ACQ rated nails, which are also called hot dip galvanized nails. For the top plate, like I said, I usually do a double top plate. I don't worry about using any hot dip galvanized. They do cost a little bit more. Not much, if I'm being honest, but they are more expensive, so I don't use those on the top plate. So I've already nailed in the first top plate, and I'm just screwing in the second top plate. I don't put in the nails through the double top plate. However, I do use 4 and 4.5 inch structural fasteners to secure the wall to the floor joists above. Like I said, this is the one wall that is going to be the security for all other walls in this sort of project. Now, obviously I'm going to take the level and make sure that the wall is plumb, both sort of forward and backward and left and right, to ensure that this wall is perfectly vertical, because this is the wall that all other walls are going to depend on for being vertical as well. I generally don't try to nail too close to the plumbing. I really don't know where the plumbing goes in the floor. So I'm just going to fire in one nail into the floor on this one, but as I build the rest of the wall, I will use additional nails in the floor. Now, like I said, I use either 4 or 4.5 inch fasteners to go through the double top plate and up into the floor joists above. In this case, there's an additional 1x4, so I go right through that and through the floor joists. Now I have built the second wall. It's a bit bigger than 36 inches, which is why I have 2 boards in the center. Those are probably at about 14 inches on center. And it has a single top plate rather than a double top plate because it's not going to connect to the floor above it anyway. As you can see, there's ductwork running just above, and then there's obviously the beam that holds up the house running just above as well. Now for this one, I am going to be able to catch that one fire block that I've got in my old wall, and I'll also get another screw down low. I'm not going to be able to do a whole bunch of screws through the wall, but I will be able to fire a couple nails through the floor, and then I'll be able to put a whole bunch of nails into the first wall that I put in. So as you can see, there's a bit of an overlap there, and I'm going to fire about 8 or 9 screws in to the wall there. And to make sure that everything is square, I'm obviously using the carpenter square throughout the process to ensure that it's looking good. And like I said, I do fire nails through the bottom plate, and normally I do the floor first and then I work my way up with the level. Now, because I already have some existing walls, I really don't have too much option for moving the wall sort of forward, backwards, left and right. It sort of has to line up. So getting that first wall plumb in both the vertical and sort of horizontal directions is pretty critical. Otherwise, everything else is going to be off because you're going to attach to that one for everything else. And as you can see, I just threw a bunch of screws in between the first wall and the second wall. Now, because I've got this oddity with this plumbing pipe, how it comes down and then does a bit of a dog leg there, I do have to put the second portion of wall a little bit back from that. So I'm coming straight down with the carpenter square and then dropping back an inch or two so that I ensure that my wall isn't actually coming into contact with the plumbing. And then obviously this wall is going to be shorter at about 24 inches. So for this one, I'm really lining it up with the wall that I've got from my utility room. And just like the first wall, I'm going to fire a lot of screws from the new wall into the old wall, and that'll obviously help hold things together because that one is fixed to the ceiling. Now to tighten everything up, everything was a little bit sloppy. I did put wood blocking at the top and the bottom, and then I did cross bracing on the top and bottom of these two walls to really tie everything together, just using some scrap 2x4s and cutting them at a 45-degree angle. It's not like a perfect cross bracing. However, that really tightened things up. I'm not necessarily too concerned with fire blocking in this case, but I found the cross bracing really improved the stiffness of the wall. Now, coming around the other direction, I used the carpenter square again, and then I just cut the bottom plate so that it all lines up. And then obviously I'm going to use the carpenter square to line everything up between all of the walls. Again, I'm not using a double top plate for all of these walls. I'm just using single top plate because they can't fix to the ceiling anyway, due to the fact that there's ductwork and a big beam in place. So I do cut a fifth portion of wall, which has come across the front. I wasn't going to use the portion up front, but because I found these walls were still a little floppy, that fifth portion of wall really increased the rigidity of everything. Now, putting the fourth wall, you can see that I've added a little piece of 2x2. I couldn't go all the way up because there's actually a water line, but I just put that 2x2 there for the purposes of drywalling later. And I did the same thing with bracing this up. So I secured it top and bottom, and then I used cross bracing. And now I've added some wood blocking in the corners, and that is just there to hold drywall. So once again, I did put the cross bracing in, and when building the walls, I did need to make sure that the wall studs were directly across from each other between the two walls so that that cross bracing could go in straight and not be at an angle. Now for the final wall, I did do a lot of horizontal pieces, which sort of look like fire blocking, but they're really there because I couldn't get a conventional top plate in because of the beam that's holding up my house. So what I did instead of putting in a top plate was do those horizontal pieces. Like I said, they look like fire blocking, but that's not what they're there for. They're really just there to hold that center stud straight vertical and make sure that it's not floppy. Now adding this fifth wall seemed kind of optional because technically I could have just put drywall between the first and fourth wall that I put in. However, this wall actually added quite a bit of rigidity, and I found that the first and fourth wall were a little bit floppy without that front. And I did run a lot of screws into that fifth wall that I put in from the first and fourth wall that I put in as well. Anyway, that's what I came up with for framing out this awkward area that has the post, the beam, the plumbing, and then trying to tie it in with other walls and work around the HVAC system. Hopefully this helps somebody out. Thanks for checking out my video, and don't forget to like and subscribe.